Hey everybody, in the last video What is Flexagon Defense, I spoke about how flex lies on the spectrum between one-to-one and zone defense, utilising switching and surrounding wherever possible to make life hard for the offense. In this part we're going to look at situations on field where it's appropriate to switch, and how to do this in a way which doesn't leave players unmarked. Switching is when two or more defenders change who they are marking. When switching is done well, the defenders are able to cover offensive movement more efficiently and more effectively than if they'd stayed marking one-to-one. This can generate higher stall counts and create more opportunities for blocks. An early switch on defense increases your efficiency over the offense as it requires the least amount of movement. The earlier a switch is made, the more likely it is to neutralise the cuts and cause the stall count to rise. In this clip, two free-speed defenders switch to neutralise Bologna's cuts. The switch here is very early, which puts it towards the surrounding end of the spectrum. Both players are well covered after the switch and the disc moves elsewhere on the field. Surrounding is the topic of the next video in this series. Late switches can catch the offense out and generate a block. However, they can be harder to recover from when not successful, especially if the move is also a surprise for one of the defenders. In this clip, there's a blown switch by Great Britain, which leaves a German player free deep. Conventional thinking says that a switch should only be initiated by the deeper defender to ensure that the deep cut will be covered. However, greater field awareness and communication could have avoided this situation just as effectively and resulted in an efficient early switch. Field awareness and communication are the subject of a later video in this series. If we continue watching this clip, we see a completely free offense player whose mark was wisely flash poaching deep to cover the deep threat opened by the blown sandwich. The defense could have made a cascade of switches to mark everyone up more efficiently after the flash poach, but instead it's left to the poacher to recover all of the ground on his original mark. Fortunately, and bizarrely, the disc stops moving and the defense are effectively able to reset. The later a switch is, the more likely it will be a surprise to one of the defenders and become a blown switch. In this clip, Bruno Mine leaves his mark and goes for a layout D on the far side of the field. There's no way for the paired defender to cover the player that Mine leaves, so this player is really a poach and it belongs towards that end of the spectrum, pretty far from surrounding. The player that he leaves is uncovered, and the most efficient way to return to one-to-one coverage in this situation would be through a cascade of switches starting with the deepest defender. Although it can be hard to recover from, a reactive late switch like this is more likely to be a surprise for the offense too, which can result in a turnover. In this clip, Wadash spots a cut aimed at the space he can get to first, and he switches off his mark just early enough to make the interception. Again, this play is more of a poach than a switch, as the player that he leaves is not immediately picked up by his teammates. Okay, I'm just going to interrupt this video with a plea. If you like my content, please consider joining my Patreon. It helps support me and it allows me the time to work on videos like this one. YouTube ads generate about $2 per video, and no tournaments means I have zero camera work jobs, which was never lucrative, but now it's simply unsustainable. Here's a 90-second video explaining what Patreon is. My Patreon link is in the description below, and I'll see you for more switching stuff in just a minute.
Patreon exists because when creators are paid, they can create more amazing things. Things that inspire us, teach us, challenge us, things that make us laugh. Patreon is a membership platform that makes it really easy for creators to get paid. We're using the idea of patronage, which is actually a really old idea.
Exactly, Jack. If it weren't for patrons, we wouldn't have Romeo and Juliet or Mona Lisa. Mozart, Shakespeare, Da Vinci, they all had patrons, mostly aristocrats who paid them to create so they could enjoy their works and brag to their friends about how cool they are for supporting creators.
Yeah, so it's kind of like that, but better. Creators of every kind, podcasters, YouTubers, musicians, writers, allow their fans to become patrons or members. Patrons set a monthly subscription style payment for the level of membership they want. Like for $5 a month, you get early access to content. $10 a month, extra videos. $20 a month, behind the scenes stuff. You name it. This provides creators with a sustainable income while retaining full creative control. And it allows fans to connect with them on a whole new level. Thousands of creators and creative teams are using Patreon to run their business their way. They're doing what they love, and they're being paid to do it by the people who love their work most. So if you're a professional creator, start a page and give your fans the opportunity to become patrons. It could help you do the best work of your life.
Cool, so we're talking about the pros and cons of late and early switching. Late switching can take the offense by surprise and generate a block, but it can also require a cascade of switches involving teammates in order to recover from efficiently. Early switches neutralize cuts and are the most efficient, causing the stall count to rise as the offense's options are taken away, but they require higher levels of field awareness and communication. Now we're going to talk about the difference between the fairly commonly seen reactive switching and getting ahead of the game mentally by preempting switches. Pre-empting switches is when defenders spot opportunities for switches before they happen and connect with their teammates. Once connected, they can then decide whether to switch early and neutralize, to be prepared for a potential late switch, or to recover quickly from a poach bid on the play. So what triggers should you be looking for to tell whether a switch might be an option? If two cutters on the field cross paths with each other, then it's the classic opportunity for a switch. There are also more subtle opportunities. Imagine you're marking an isolated player one-to-one, and that player begins to make a cut. As you cover them, assess their path and the space that they're aimed at. If their path takes them past one of your teammates, or the space that they're aiming for is closer to one of your teammates, then look to connect with that teammate for a switch. Imagine being on the other end of this too. You're marking a player one-to-one, and then you notice another player's cut is aimed to go past you, or it's aimed at a space that you can get to before them. This usually means that a switch is possible. In this clip, Bruno Mine recognises his mark is running deep, where he has support from his teammates. As soon as he points, both teammates react and his nearest teammate switches, neutralising the deep move entirely. As soon as the switch happens, the nearest offense player rightly cuts as a response, but in a direction which Mine can cover, neatly completing the switch. Whilst this has been going on, another defender has been surveying the field and poaches off their mark, not realising the undermove is already covered. The move by this defender is a poach and not a switch, because no other teammate was involved. He didn't get any connection with a teammate, so nobody could cover the mark that he was leaving. Although the switch was more efficient for the defense than the offense, the thrower responds perfectly to the additional and unnecessary poach by hitting the free player directly. In this clip, Kurt Gibson and Will Locke switch to try to contain Schlackett.
Back to Rasmussen.
Schlackett is able to get the disc, and after offloading, Locke switches again. Schlackett is very good at adapting to the new situations and making a good move to get the disc in his hands. Although both these switches were well timed and increased the efficiency of the defense, the offense responded well and were able to keep the disc moving.
Cahill looking for the swing. Rasmussen has a lot of break space.
The sequence finishes with Schlackett being caught out by a pick in a situation where the defense didn't commit to the switch. In this clip from the World's Final in 2016, Japan executes what is typically called a roll or a buzz switch, where they stifle a give-go move by switching as the thrower releases the disc. Tanaka is aware of his teammate's position, and so he's able to switch instantly, gesticulating for clarification. This switch is seen fairly regularly in defenses combating offenses that move the disc quickly. The most commonly seen switching in Ultimate is reactive. The offense have made a good move. For example, there's a free player streaking deep, and the defense switch as a damage limitation tactic. Preempted switching, on the other hand, is proactive, and instead of just limiting damage, it's a way for the defense to take control of the game and actively seek advantage over the offense. Reactive switching can create problems and confusion because you're not sure whether your teammate is going to switch and cover your player that you're leaving, or whether they're going to interpret your move as a flash poach, meaning that then you have to recover and catch up with your old mark. To play flex well and to actively gain an advantage through switching, you must have a preemptive mindset, expecting switches, and adapting to new situations without hesitation. In this clip of Brighton playing Flexigan defense against European champions Clapham in 2018, all the defenders in the stack connect early, and then they work together to ensure all the initial downfield cuts are covered. Jake Betson, at the front of the stack, is closest to the space that the cut from the back is aimed at, so he neutralises it early, whilst the back of the stack switches to neutralise the deep cut. Mannings tightens up in the middle of the stack and covers the next undercut. Betson is preempting on the far side, and he switches to neutralise the next undercut, and then again to neutralise the upline cut. The second switch was seen late by the other defender, so Clapham are able to swing the disc to the other side of the field. After working harder than Brighton trying to get free on the far side, the turnover comes from an execution error on a throw to a marked player. Tom Mannings then throws an absolute peach to Fungarino for the goal.
Slightly unusual looking throw to Slaughter. Mannings with the hammer, that is inch perfect from Tom Mannings.
At this more advanced level of flex, switching can be combined with surrounding, so that a surrounding defender can switch out of that setup in order to cover a player one-to-one, whilst the defender previously marking one-to-one takes up the surrounding duties. This is highly efficient, but it's only achievable with great awareness, communication, and training. Learn more by clicking the Patreon link in the description, pledge $1 for every time you rewatch this video, and share it with your team, and I'll see you in Discord.